parent of a 15-year-old trans child, and I was asked to talk about my experience on this journey with a focus on lessons learned to help other parents who may be on this journey. I want to start with, you have no idea. When you bring that beautiful little bundle home, you have no idea what surprises it will bring. Listen and watch and allow. Gender identity and fluidity start to show up very early. Separate sexual orientation and gender identity in your head because they are different. My husband and I mistakenly looked at my child's actions and behaviors as choices that needed to be addressed for his personal safety. We didn't get that his behavior was a matter of gender identification and self-expression, unconscious. And this early misunderstanding caused our kid a lot of pain. It's especially nasty that gender identity can surface right alongside the terrible twos. We made the additional mistake of seeing much of his behavior as willful, so not only did we not encourage his variant self-expression, we actively discouraged it. And sadly, we did this with the full support and help of a psychologist. Obviously, it was one who did not understand gender identity. So by the time he was 6, my happiest baby you ever saw had become so angry, so sad, so hurt, that he threatened suicide. "Mommy, I'm going to get a real gun and kill myself." So back to the mental health profession we went. This time the child was diagnosed with anxiety. That's a correct diagnosis, but another missed opportunity to identify and support his gender variance. So the lesson here is to pick your providers very carefully. And this includes daycare providers. But before I talk about that, I want to underscore a lesson my husband and I learned far too late. Repeat this to yourself and share it with family and friends and others. You cannot make your child, or any child, more comfortable with one gender than another. That's already been done. Built into the system, baked in the cake, designed by God, however you want to phrase it. The only power you have as a parent, and it's also the most important power, is the power to make your child feel comfortable and celebrated, or to make him or her feel embarrassed and shameful. So get ready for preschool bullies and well-intentioned adults, and get out in front of them, especially if you have a boy who exhibits female behaviors. Be upfront with all the providers. Tell the daycare manager, my child likes to dress like a girl and pretend he has long hair, and I realize that's not gender conforming, and I expect you to accept and celebrate him in the full spectrum of who he is. Meet with the providers. Bring resources. Contact PFLAG. PFLAG will go there and give them a presentation. Do whatever it takes to educate those who will care for your child. And if you get resistance, find a new provider. You have more power here than you will ever have in the public school system. Use it and enjoy it. Bullies, if they haven't touched you yet, will come out in preschool and will be an active and hurtful part of you and your child's life, probably forever. Just as the parents of minority children teach their kids how to navigate in a world full of bigotry, you will have to do the same. Bigotry comes in a spectrum of expressions, from overt hate crimes to subtle, pernicious, two-faced, false support. You, your family, and most especially your child will see it all. Do what you can to protect your child from it. More important, do what you have to prepare your child to deal with it. If you haven't already, you will now begin to meet the legion of well-intentioned adults. These are the adults who attempt to teach your child the proper and acceptable behavior for his or her gender. This will range from frightening your child to punishing a certain behavior or even threatening. If you continue to do that, you'll be asked to leave. The most egregious of these well-intentioned adults is the sports coach. You may have noticed, no matter the gender orientation of your child, the sports coaches today comprise the last bastion of adults who are allowed to bully our children. Don't tolerate it. One of the most important gifts I ever gave my son was lambasting a cheer coach who was trying to toughen him up by exposing him to verbal and emotional abuse. Marital health and managing the great divide. If there exists a set of parents who agree on how to raise the most mainstream and conforming child, I have yet to meet them. The stress of helping a child with such a tremendous challenge as gender identity can easily overwhelm any marriage and any family. Don't try to do this without support. PFLAG, support groups, therapy, good friends, a stiff drink once in a while, use them all. This challenge can and does rip families apart. One study claimed that 40% of trans kids are kicked out or run away. Do whatever you can to guard against sacrificing either your child or your marriage. You don't have to understand or agree with your spouse's feelings or choices. You do have to keep the child out of the middle. You do have to treat everyone with respect and demand that they treat you and each other with respect. A safe and nurturing childhood is a precious thing, especially for kids with gender issues, and it must be protected. A healthy marriage, on the other hand, is also a precious thing and something that you want to last long after the children are grown and gone. Schools, teachers, and guidance counselors. This is hard, as though the marriage thing isn't hard enough. This is hard because it's not what it seemed. Now let me tell you, I thank God that I live in this county and that we have the dedicated educators and guidance counselors that work in our schools as part of the village that is raising my child. They are some of the most caring, talented, and hardworking professionals you will ever want to find in a school system. But you have to be prepared. The system is bigger and more powerful than the individuals who work in it. I have found more support than I could hope for from the individuals in this group. And at the same time, I am amazed at how unprepared the system is to deal with this. Here's an example. Last month, at PFLAG panel of county teachers, administrators, and staff, they shared what they were doing to make their schools open and affirming for all students. It was wonderful. I was thrilled until I realized that they were each working independently. They weren't doing this because they were trained to do it or expected to do it. They did it because each, as an individual, deeply understood the need and deeply cared for kids. And let me tell you, some very lucky kids go to their schools. But not all kids are that lucky. To my knowledge, there is no concerted effort or program in the school system that helps students, teachers, parents, or staff deal with gender-variant kids. There is a policy that protects gender-variant children, which is huge. But there is no assurance that at least one teacher or staff person will prominently display the human rights equal sign or the rainbow sticker or some signal for these kids as to where it would be safe to go. And there's no protocol for transitioning children. As far as I know, there's no gender-free restroom for kids or locker room. When my son walked into the boys' locker room one day, he overheard another boy say, "He shouldn't be allowed in our locker room, he doesn't belong here." Well, believe me, my son feels he doesn't belong there, but what choice does he have? There are 2 coaches for the varsity cheer squad at my child's school. My kid cheers and he wanted to be on varsity. We had a sense that his feminine comportment might be part of the reason he wasn't making the varsity team. So we met with the coach. She assured my child that he has every opportunity to make varsity and he should never compromise who he is. Meanwhile, the other coach was overheard telling someone a few months later, "Oh yeah, we have a boy on cheer, but he'll never make varsity. He's too effeminate." You see the mixed messages? It's fine, we'll protect you, but we don't have a locker room where you feel safe. Be who God made you, but if you are, you can't be on the varsity team. It's an undercurrent of bigotry that's painted over with what's socially accepted or proper. I don't mean to be critical. I don't think any individual meant to be hurtful. I think we live in a binary society that makes this really, really hard. And I think these teachers and coaches and students just don't understand. I'll bet that, like my husband and me, they think the behaviors they find disconcerting are a conscious choice, not an unconscious expression of self. I don't know how much training teachers and staff get on this issue, but I'll bet you a cup of coffee. It's served up under diversity, and it comes in last behind race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation. In other words, I'll bet what they do get is likely mostly about GLB and very little about T. They mean well, they love kids. My husband and I meant well, we love our kid. But until you get educated on this issue, you are very likely to do more harm than good. So where do you find people educated on the issue, or at least experienced? Good luck. The good news is you're a groundbreaker. The bad news is it's hard to be a groundbreaker. Transition support and finding the right providers. Telling your story again and again. That's what it takes to find the right provider. By the time puberty came along and gender again arose in our house, we were in the hands of a wonderful therapist. She correctly recommended that we see someone who has experience helping transgender people. We had decided to put my son on puberty blockers at the same time, a practice much more common in Europe. So at this time I was looking for 2 trans-friendly providers, a psychologist and an endocrinologist. The search was far more painful and difficult than it should have been. I started with our pediatrician, who is the best, but he'd never encountered this before, so when we asked for his help prescribing puberty blockers, he wanted to learn more. That led him to the head of pediatric endocrinology at the State University Hospital System. who told him that my kid needed to be in the care of a psychologist and a team to help him. That's cool, sounds great. But he couldn't recommend a psychologist and a team to help my kid. The head, pediatric endocrinology at our state's university medical system, could not recommend someone, nor did he offer to research to find someone. I found that stunningly hard to believe. Meanwhile, our family therapist had recommended 2 providers in the next city, both of whom were fully booked and not taking new patients. But they gave me more names, and I called more people, who gave me more names, and I called more people, and I told my story again and again and again. Finally, I found a psychologist in our city who works with adults in transition. I screened him on the phone, and then I took my child to see him, but that didn't work out at all. He didn't get the teens and transition issue, and that visit just ended up making my kid feel bad. Now, the next provider was further away, but he had experience with both trans adults and trans kids. He's working out well so far, and he's helping our kid find his way through this. So we drive for an hour each way to see him every few weeks. Then we were on the hunt for an endocrinologist. The first one, also an hour away, did not take insurance and wanted $400 for the initial consultation. $400 to talk, with no guarantee that he would treat my son. You think there's a recession? I think there's a market here. That made me feel taken advantage of, and frankly, it made me feel dirty. So I kept looking, and on the Equality website, I found one endocrinologist in our city who treats trans people. He charges me a $10 copay, and he treats me and my son with respect. A lesson for parents: don't rely on traditional channels for help. It takes digging and dedication. And oh, by the way, as with any medical condition that is on the edge, having enough money to pay for care is important too. And in this condition, so is having a thick skin and the ability to keep going no matter who says what to you. Safety and decision-making get real and get there fast. The numbers, the statistics are against you. Your child is at higher risk for everything: depression, suicide, alcohol and drug abuse, violence, and premature death. Your job is to make sure your kid knows how to be safe. Make sure your kid knows about hate crimes. Make sure he or she never goes out without friends nearby. Teach your child alone is vulnerable. During the teen years, be so careful of parties. Be so careful of drinking. Booze makes for bad decision-making. My husband likes to remind me that there is little in this world stupider than a teenage boy. They are largely testosterone-driven, and if you add alcohol or drugs, what little ability they may have had to make reasonable decisions is entirely lost. Parties and high testosterone sporting events need to be attended with caution. I'm not saying lock your child in a closet. I am saying be careful and teach your child how to be. Teach your child to assess each situation before he or she relaxes into it. Finally, hold yourself gently. Raising a child who is trans or gender variant is difficult. It's scary. It's more than you bargained for, and it's likely more than you will ever comprehend. So my final point for parents is to hold yourself gently. Forgive yourself for not knowing, for not understanding. And hold your spouse gently. He or she is like the rest of us, doing the best they can. But mostly, hold your child gently. Oh, so very gently. Because for the most part, the world will not. Even if it's just the world of preschool and play dates. And finally, if you are involved with a family that is on this journey, if you're a teacher or an administrator or a provider, please be gentle. Please be kind. Please get educated. You simply have no idea how much it will mean to them. Thanks.